Hello, today's daily reading comes from the book of the Apocrypha. We are reading from 4th Maccabees, first chapter, and it reads as follows. As I am going to demonstrate a most philosophical proposition, namely that religious reasoning is absolute master of the passions, I would willingly advise you to give the utmost heed to philosophy. For reason is necessary to everyone as a step of science, and more especially does it embrace the praise of prudence, the highest virtue. If then reasoning appears to hold the majesty over the passions which stand in the way of temperance, such as gluttony and lust, it surely also and manifestly has the rule over the affections which are contrary to justice, such as malice, and of those which are hindrances to manliness, as wrath and pain and fear. How then is it perhaps some may say that reasoning, if it rules the affections, is not also master of forgetfulness and ignorance? They attempt a ridiculous argument, for reasoning does not rule over its own affections, but over such as are contrary to justice and manliness and temperance and prudence, and yet over these, so as to withstand without destroying them. I might prove to you from many other considerations that religious reasoning is sole master of the passions, but I will prove it with the greatest force from the fortitude of Eleazar and 7 kindred, and their mother who suffered death in the defense of virtue. For all these, treating pains with contempt, even to death, by his contempt demonstrated that reasoning has command over the passions. For their virtues, then, it is right that I should commend those men who died with their mother at this time in behalf of rectitude, and for their honors I may count them happy. For they, winning admiration not only from men in general, but even from the persecutors, for their manliness and endurance became the means of the destruction of the tyranny against their nation, having conquered the tyrant by their endurance, so that by them their country was purified. But we may now at once enter upon the question, having commenced as is our wont, with laying down the doctrine, and so proceed to the account of these persons, giving glory to the all wise God. The question, therefore, is whether reasoning be absolute master of the passions. Let's determine then what is reasoning and what passion, and how many forms of the passions, and whether reasoning bears sway over all of these. Reasoning is then intellect accompanied by a life of rectitude, putting foremost the consideration of wisdom. And wisdom is a knowledge of divine and human things and of their causes. And this is contained in the education of the law, by means of which we learn divine things reverently and human things profitably. And the forms of wisdom are prudence and justice and manliness and temperance. The leading one of these is prudence, by whose means indeed it is the reasoning bears rule over the passions. Of the passions, pleasure and pain are the two most comprehensive, and they also by nature refer to the soul. And there are many attachment affections surrounding pleasure and pain. Before pleasure is lust, and after pleasure joy, and before pain is fear, and after pain is sorrow. Wrath is an affection common to pleasure and to pain, if anyone will pay attention when it comes upon him. And there exists in pleasure a malicious disposition, which is the most multiform of all the affections. In the soul, it is arrogance and love of money and vain pride and contention and faithlessness and the evil eye. In the body, it is greediness and gomorrhizing and solitary gluttony, as pleasures and pain are. Therefore, two growth of the body and the soul, so there are many offshoots of these passions. And reasoning, the universal husbandmen purging and pruning these severally, and binding round and watering and transplanting in every way improves the materials of the morals and affections. For reasoning is the leader of the virtues, but is the sole ruler of the passions. Observe then first, through the very things which stand in the way of temperance, that reasoning is absolute ruler of the passions. Now temperance consists of a command over the lust, but of the lust some belong to the soul, others the body, and over each of these classes the reasoning appears to bear sway. For where is it otherwise that when urged on to forbidden meats, we reject the gratification which would ensure from them? Is it not because reasoning is able to command the appetites? I believe so. Hence it is then that when lusting after water animals and birds and four-footed beasts and all kinds of food which are forbidden Us by the law, we withhold ourselves through the mastery of reasoning, for the affections of our appetites are resisted by the temperate understanding, and bent back again, and all the impulses of the body are reined in by reasoning. Amen.